This is Mondraker's new Dune XR. It's their all-new super light electric mountain bike. It's got the new Bosch SX motor, so 55 Newton meters of torque with 600 watts of peak power. And it's a super enduro bike. It's got 165 of rear wheel travel and 180mm out the front. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Mondraker's all-new super lightweight, super enduro Dune XR. Mondraker's Dune is an all-new category of bike from the Spanish brand. It's a sub 20 kilo, mid-power, long travel e-bike. The 165mm of rear wheel travel has Mondraker's new zero suspension linkage, which is also found on their downhill bikes. It's a tightly packaged shock that runs under the seat tube, and the shock actually floats between two suspension links. Mondraker say that this suspension layout has excellent pedalling efficiency with zero pedal kickback on compression and also zero brake jerk, meaning that the rear brake forces won't work against the suspension forces under hard braking. Mondraker say that the carbon frame is their most advanced layout to date. It's called Stealth Carbon Air, and it uses cutting-edge industrial design and layout techniques to ensure the bike is stiff in the right places and compliant where it matters to reduce trail chatter and harshness. The total frame weight is only 2.65 kilos. I've been testing the bike on a mix of fast trails and steeper enduro tracks, as well as testing out the Bosch SX motor to see if it can clean some of the steeper climbs that I require an e-bike to do. Mondraker have put out quite a few bold claims regarding the frame and the suspension design. And the first thing I noticed was that out of the box, the bike needed a fair bit of setting it up to get it to feel good. So the bike is quite active and agile and it felt a little bit nervous right out the box. And when I first rode it, I had to put on a longer stem, so it came with a 35 and I put on a 50, and I've risen the bars from the stock, which was quite a low rise, to these 50mm rise. And the reason for that is it can feel a little bit twitchy on the lighter bikes, and I'm 191 centimeters, 6'3". And even on the XL, I found it a little bit compact out the front. So the front feels pretty good. I've got the fork, I would say 85% of feeling as good as it possibly could be for me and my skill level. But the rear is still it's still pinging me around quite a little bit. It's not got that super supple coil sensitivity just yet. And I think partly that is because the XLs come with a 502 pound spring, which is definitely oversprung for my weight. So I've got the rebound damping full, but it's still quite fast. It still feels like it's pinging me around quite a bit. And that's leading to some situations that feel a little bit nervous for me. I'm looking for the bike to be really calm and stable and soak up all the bumps. The coil should be almost like magic carpet feeling. I do like a little bit of pop out the rear, but I'm finding that I'm going to need to start working on this rear. And I guess the main thing I'm looking for is confidence and balance and good suspension performance. The front is pretty much there through cockpit, fork tuning, stem length, that kind of stuff. The rear, still feeling a little bit nervous to me. So I'm going to try a lighter weight spring, and hopefully that'll be a big step in the right direction, because oversprung or undersprung can make a massive difference to the ride. Bike setup is quite a personal thing, and any decent shop will likely swap out the stock spring for something more suited to the rider weight when the bike is sold. Having moved down to a 450 pound spring, the bike felt a lot more settled out the back. When it comes to bike design and aesthetics, I really think that Mondraker have nailed it. The bike is sleek and elegant, and the integration of the Bosch SX system is excellent, although I did remove the big bulky screen from the front of the bike. More on that later. So let's take a closer look at this Bosch SX motor. It's a really compact little unit, And the stats on this are really interesting because you get up to 600 watts of peak power, which is really close to the full power motor. So out the front, I think is a very clean look. I've actually taken off the big Bosch Kiox 500 display. I personally like to have like a clear vision out the front, and the display, whilst it's got some useful information, personally I found it a little bit too much. So you can remove it completely. That's the great thing with this Bosch smart system. Everything's plug and play. So I took that off. If I ever did any kind of navigating, riding where I need a map, the wire's still in there, so I can just put it on. It takes a couple of minutes to put that on. It's very clean out the front. It's got the wireless Bluetooth Bosch mode controller here. You can even take that off if you want to as well, because everything is controlled from the system controller. This little LED based system interface just here. And then if I wanted to, I can just change the modes by holding down this button here to go down or pressing it to go up. So it's really, really clean out the front, and it's the same as the Bosch full power system. In fact, again, it's all plug and play, so those Bosch full power parts work on this. Now, there's some key characteristics to this motor. It requires fast RPM to unlock that 600 watts. So whilst you're only getting the 55 Newton meters of like low down torque and rotational force, it will unleash up to 600 watts when you're spinning at high cadence. Now, in my experience, you're not spinning at that speed very often, but there are occasions when you will crank quite fast. It may be momentarily that you're putting in that kind of cadence, but it does happen. So this can almost give you the same top end power, but you have to work a lot harder to get it. Back to the riding. Now I've got the bike fully sorted. Higher rise bars, 50mm, a softer spring, and dialed in the Öhlins suspension as best I can. The Öhlins fork definitely doesn't feel quite as plush to me as the Fox stuff. Perhaps I'm just more used to Fox. The bike is more on the fun and playful side of things, especially for a long travel e-bike. It's a sprightly little character. It's eager to pop around on the trails, but it doesn't have that sure-footed, planted and stuck to the ground feel like a heavier full-power e-bike. And even with tinkering the suspension a fair bit, I couldn't get it to feel completely supple. There's still a little bit of the chatter transmitted through to me over the rooty sections. The bike's also a little rearward biased for me too. I have to consciously weight the front of the bike to provide enough grip over the front tyre. I really do like a mullet setup, but I think the chainstays are a bit short on the XL bike to get the balance I want between the front and the rear wheel. I find I constantly have to think about weighting the front tyre, and my body language on the bike reflects this somewhat. Ooh. Tried to get enough weight over the front wheel to get it to dig in, and where I'm doing this kind of maneuver from turning left to right, kind of hooked the back and it just ejected me from the rear and effectively high-sided me out. I think in a size medium or large, the bike's balance will feel a lot better compared to my XL version. In a future version, I hope to see size-specific chainstays to help balance it out a little bit more. I did get used to it after a few rides, but kept thinking that the front felt a little bit light on both climbs and flatter corners. I really do like the Bosch SX motor. It has enough punch when you start cranking the pedals fast to unleash the full 600 watts and clear some really tough climbs. Another thing I noticed with the bike is the seat tube height is really high. Now the shock runs through the seat tube, so it limits the insertion of a seat tube post, and partnered with this axis that has a really high stack height, I felt it just kept getting in the way. Also going down, I can't drop it down as far as I would like to. In fact, to the point where if I own this bike, I'd have to get rid of this axis dropper post because the stack's too high. I want it to be as low as possible here. And this axis, the stack is like 6 centimeters from the collar to the rails. And it just means a dropper post, I can't get slammed enough. The Bosch kit is excellent. It's my favourite lightweight motor system on the market at the moment. It gives a good blend of power, weight, range and integration. The 400 watt-hour fixed internal battery can also be boosted with a 250 watt-hour range extender. So I want to give you an example of how loud or how quiet this bike is. It is a lower powered bike, so I think it sounds less noisy than some of the other full power bikes on the market. But there's definitely some noise, especially when you start getting to that higher cadence when the motor gives you the full 600 watts. Now, all bikes resonate slightly differently, even with the same motors. So they all sound slightly different, like carbon and aluminium, even with the same motor systems. In my experience, they all can sound quite different from each other. So just take this with, you know, a little bit of a grain of salt as to how this Bosch SX motor sounds, because in another bike, it might be a little bit different. But in the name of this video, on the Mondraker Dune with the SX motor. So I've got it in the highest power mode. I'll ride down here and I'll start pedaling at a lower cadence, and then I'll speed up. I'll give it as fast as a cadence as I feel comfortable with, hoping to get to that 120 level. And you can hear how the noise ramps up. Has a little bit of a kind of clunking noise as well. Most of the Bosch bikes do have, to be honest with you. So first of all, let's give it a fast boost up the trail and listen to how noisy it is. And then as I speed up, you can definitely hear it get louder. Doesn't bother me, because as you start speeding up, you're normally coming up to a feature or something else that you're kind of focusing on and trying to clear it, or trying to get to the top of a crest, top of a hill. So it doesn't bother me, but it's not the quietest motor. And most of that is down to the fact that you're getting 600 watts from it. So still, it's pretty punchy, 55 Newton meters of torque. But to unleash the full power, you need to spin fast, and with that comes a little bit of noise. So just how powerful is this Bosch SX motor? It's a lightweight motor that gives up to the 600 watts. What does that allow you to do? And do you actually need that amount of power? Well, just behind me, there's a very steep, punchy, short climb. It's virtually impossible to do on a regular pedal bike. And on the latest crop of lightweight e-bikes, it's very, very hard to do. Like, very hard. I've had to take multiple attempts to clear it. So I'm going to do it on this to give me a kind of benchmark as to how well this can perform and see how it goes. And I know I'm going to have to give it some cranks to get that full power mode, but if this can conquer it, I'll be really impressed, because it is a tough climb. And it gets progressively steeper to a really steep gradient as it gets to the top, and it gets really loose, and there's some roots going along it as well. And that's one of the reasons why it's really difficult to get up, because as you get to the top, it gets steeper and steeper and looser and looser. And that's where you really need the grunt of the motor to help propel you over and above the roots and like the trail kind of debris and stuff. So It's actually a really good test of how well a bike climbs. And like I already said, it's a real challenge on one of the super light motors. It's a tough one, but it's doable. This motor is a really impressive little motor package, just a little powerhouse. You have to time it different to what you would do a full fat powerful e-bike. When you see something steep coming up, you need to give it some revs. You definitely need to put the power down, and you can kind of hear the motor spool up a little bit. And then it gives you this like progressive power delivery where it starts to deliver more power to the back wheel. But you have to be looking ahead more than you would on a full power bike. So you have to think a little bit more about the climb. You have to see what's in front of you coming up, and then you have to start putting the power down earlier. And when you do spin it up, it starts to give you the full 600 watts. And that was how I got up this climb that is actually a tough climb to get up. It's never going to look steep on video, but trust me, it is, and it's loose. But this little punchy powerhouse got up there, no problem.
The Mondraker Dune is one of only a few big-hitting, long-travel, sub-20 kilo e-bikes on the market. Sure, there's some tweaks to the Geo, in XL specifically, that I'd like to see, but its mix of power to weight and long travel make it an extremely capable enduro bike that feels closer to that of a regular pedal bike in the ride feel. Mondraker keep upping the pace of e-bike development, and the Dune XR is a fine example of the best of the 2024 electric bike technology wrapped into a beautiful looking EMTB.